Politics from the Crypt. Let's see. Tax here, spend there, and... Oh! Hello, kiddies, boys and ghouls of all ages. It's your old pal, Uncle Bernie Cryptkeeper here, with another political proposition that will give you all chills and nightmares for many a fiscal season to come. I've got a new deal here for you all that is bound to give you a fright you'll never forget. That's right, kiddies. This is a little piece of horror that will make you pay 70% of your income and capital gains for failed government benefits. But enough about my first stage plans for when I become president. We're here to read another frightful tale, a Stygian story of dread and dismay that I like to call My Universal Medicare Plan for America.
Sorry to interrupt the broadcast there, everyone, but if I left you there, you all would have more than likely died. Not just from fright, but also from stomach-twisting nausea. In any case, let's get on with our feature presentation, shall we?
Speaking lies, denying imply that we cannot get by without you.
Howdy, folks. At long last, your favorite friendly neighborhood ANCAP mercenary, Night Shift 10,000, has returned with a new awesome addition to his channel. This is going to be a video on a golden oldie, much like my Communist Manifesto debunking video. Like I said in my intro video way back when, in the long ago, I wanted to do videos on older, more vintage videos on YouTube that my fellow ANCAPs may not be aware of, and this is going to be one of those. Today we are going to be spotlighting the video, Is America a Democracy or a Republic? And yes, I'll answer that question really quick. It's a republic, obviously. I don't take exception with the main point of the video, but the video goes down several avenues that I want to give my own points on. So, without further ado, here's the video.
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" His immediate response was, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Yet most Americans today have been persuaded that our nation's governmental system is a democracy and not a republic.
No lies detected so far. Looks like this video's off to a good start. Let's see where it goes.
The difference between these two is essential in understanding Americanism and the American system. Before we discuss political systems, however, it's helpful to address the confusion that has been spread about the political spectrum. Many have been led to believe that the political spectrum places groups such as communists on the far left, fascists or dictators on the far right, and political moderates or centrists in the middle. However, a more accurate political spectrum will show government having zero power on the far right to having 100% power on the far left. At the extreme right, there is no government. The extreme left features total government under such labels as communism, socialism, Nazism, fascism, princes, potentates, dictators, kings, any form of total government. Those who claim that Nazis and fascists are right-wing never define their terms.
This is not totally accurate. Some groups do give their reasons on why they believe Nazis and fascists were and still are right-wing and right-leaning. However, these groups are largely incorrect, and the groups themselves are more often than not groups like Antifa or other communist and socialist-leaning groups that want to distance themselves from groups like Nazis and fascists. Got bad news for the commies and the socialists, though. All your groups are fairly similar, to say the least.
This amounts to spreading confusion. Toward the middle of the political spectrum can be found the type of government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people.
Oh, and here we go, folks. A government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people. Oh, God. Oh, that's a good one. So, Obviously, this video does have a bias surrounding it and isn't going to be an objective history or political science lesson. Because, as anyone in their right mind knows, or at least I would hope knows, government never protects or preserves the rights of its people, and always falls to tyranny. Hell, if we want to get technical, governments are tyrannical by design. A government simply exists as an entity of restricting the freedoms and rights of the people that are being governed by said government. Now, I know a lot of people are watching this thinking, night shift, why is that such a bad thing? And to anyone out there thinking this or saying this to themselves right now, I just have this to say to you. Get the hell off my channel! Okay, hold on. The reason this is a negative is because freedom and liberty are usually preserved not by governments, but strong, empowered individuals that take it upon themselves to preserve their independence and their liberties against negative factors like tyranny. Governments, when they come into existence, will work to quash those traits in people to quell what it labels as dissidence. This process creates a dependency culture where people are no longer strong and empowered, but are dependent and subservient to the government entity. Yeah, does that sound good to anyone?
That's where the Constitution of the United States is. Those who advocate such a form of government are really constitutional moderates.
And you know, I could say a myriad of things on why that statement is bound to fail, but I think I'll let Cersei Lannister do it for me. Take it away, Cersei.
Is this meant to be your shield, Lord Stark? A piece of paper.
Yeah, America. If your only shield against tyranny is a piece of paper, one that the government wrote and has no problem using as toilet paper on a regular basis, then, well, there's no other way to say it nicely. You're fucked. And hey, it's not as if history doesn't teach us the folly of such things, now does it?
So let's analyze the basic forms of government. They are monarchy or dictatorship ruled by one, oligarchy ruled by a few, democracy ruled by a majority, republic ruled by law, and anarchy, which is ruled by no one. In discussing these five, we'll see that they can be narrowed down to even fewer. Looking first at monarchy or dictatorship, this form of government doesn't really exist in the practical sense. It's always a group that puts one of its members up front. A king has his council of nobles or earls, and every dictator has his bureaucrats or commissars, the men behind the scenes. This isn't ruled by one, even though one person may be the visible leader. It's ruled by a group. So let's eliminate monarchy, dictatorship, because it never truly exists. Oligarchy, which is ruled by a group, is the most common form of government in all history. And it is the most common form of government today.
Oh, oligarchies are even more common than you would believe.
Most of the nations of the world are ruled by a powerful few.
Really? You don't say. Interesting, that.
And therefore oligarchy remains. At the other end, we find anarchy, which means without government. Some people have looked over history and found that many of its worst crimes were committed by governments. So they decided that having no government might be a good idea. But this is a mistake, because as the ancient Greeks stated, without law there can be no freedom.
And here's where the video starts making mistaken points. The Greeks that made this statement were incorrect, as law is literally the limitation of freedom and individual liberties. How can something that limits and even negates freedom preserve freedom? It needs to be noted, however, that the Greeks that made this statement were the rulers at the time, so that's to be expected. Anarchism, on the other hand, is a belief in the abolition of all government and the organization of society on a voluntary, cooperative basis without the recourse to force or compulsion. Anarchy is absolute freedom of the individual.
Our founding fathers agreed and held that some amount of government is a necessary force in any civilized, orderly society.
How do you limit that government? How do you keep it from becoming too strong? How do you keep it from infringing on the rights of the people? How do you expect it not to overpower the people? Look, you can't just cut out 95% of the tumor and not expect it to heal and grow back even stronger than before.
In a state of anarchy, however, everyone has to guard life, liberty, and property and the lives of family members. Everyone must be armed, and movement is severely restricted because one's property has to be protected at all times.
Or you can pay someone on a completely voluntary basis to do it for you.
Civilized people have always hired someone to do the guarding, a sheriff, a police force, or some branch of government.
And this video did exactly what I was hoping it wouldn't do. It brushed over private security entirely. Private security is far more reliable and less prone to corruption than public security that is forced on the people by a government. Here, let me explain it like this. Let's first go into both forms of security, which are public and private. With both forms of security, you have a fairly basic process. The people have a need for security, and that demand is supplied by a security force. The problem with public security is that it's usually universally imposed on the people that wanted the security in the first place. This imposition is commonly enforced by the government, who usually act as a catalyst or even a middleman of sorts in this process. Being a middleman in the process, the government interrupts the free flow of supply and demand between the people and the security force, thus acting as a regulator in the flow. The people then have to pay the government, which issues some to the security force, and the security force then have the middleman of government to fall back on and to take orders from other than the people that would be their clients. The security force is no longer subject to its clients, the people, but is subject to the middleman of government. However, it can also use the government to its advantage as the security force keeps the government in power over the people. At that point, the security force and the government form a symbiotic relationship as the security force keeps government in power and the government can protect the security force from its potential clients, the people. This means that both government and security force can now abuse their power openly, overruling and overwhelming the people to achieve their own whims. The government can now use the security force to coerce the people into funding the government as the government turns a blind eye to corrupt actions by the security force and increases the power of the security force to further coerce the people. This is literally our system of police and law enforcement laid out bare. However, governments and security forces like these do not simply use fear of their presence to keep people in line, but also the government and security force will embark upon propaganda crusades to fool the people into thinking that their presence and their corruption are necessary. Usually by stating that without them, there would be anarchy, which they conflate as chaos and open murder. But nothing could be further from the truth. There have been countless examples of societies that either had no government or were outright anarchies that worked out incredibly. These societies, more often than not, were peaceful, altruistic, and cooperative. A good example of this recently is Iceland, which currently has no government and has periodically gone without a government presence. It has been voted the most internally peaceful country on the planet several times. Now, if you're going to scoff at the size of the population of Iceland or any of the anarchist societies that have existed in the past, then I would have to ask you this. Why do mere population numbers matter? And do you believe that freedom is an intrinsic human value? If you believe or claim to believe that human freedom is an intrinsic value to all human beings, then why do population numbers of any size matter in the equation of liberty? And to any idiots out there that are going to claim that Somalia is an anarchist state, then I'm going to have to stop you there and educate you. Somalia is not an anarchy, as I've stated several times in past videos. It is an anocracy, or a territory with several factional governments vying for power within it. The problem with Somalia is not that it has no government. The problem is it has 11 governments fighting within its borders. The big problem here is the government's lies about anarchy are just that, lies, completely false and fallacious. What's not completely false, however, is the fact that government has made it so that the security forces have no obligation to protect you or serve you as the people. Quoting this article from the Mises Institute, neither the Constitution nor state law impose a general duty upon police officers or other governmental officials to protect individual persons from harm, even when they know the harm will occur, said Darian L. Hitchinson, a professor and associate dean at the University of Florida School of Law. Police can watch someone attack you, refuse to intervene, and not violate the Constitution. Yeah, do you all feel safe and protected now? Oh, no, don't worry. It gets better. Furthermore, in the cases of Deshawnee versus Winnebago and Town of Castle Rock versus Gonzales, the Supreme Court has ruled that police agencies are not obligated to provide protective services to citizens. In other words, police are well within their rights to pick and choose. Pick and choose, ladies and gentlemen, when to intervene to protect lives and property of others, even when a threat is apparent. This is where the biggest and worst lie comes in, when security forces state that they are simply serving and protecting the people. But again, this could not be further from the truth, as the security force in question only serves and protects the state. They are not the friends or servants of the people, and that has to be acknowledged. Yeah. Do you feel safe now, ladies and gentlemen? Do you feel protected by the police now with everything that you've heard? I certainly hope not. Now, going into private security, we can see with private security that there is no middleman or catalyst in the flow between the people or clients and the security force, as it is a private service. The security force is completely subject to the clientele of the people in this case, and the people can voluntarily join or opt out as they so choose, meaning they are not forced to use the service and can choose to defend themselves. This also means that the private security force is more effective and less prone to corruption based on competition between different security forces, and there is also the fact that private security force has to act as efficiently as possible or it will lose customers. But how effective can a private security force be? Well, there are countless examples of private security forces acting faster and more effectively against violent or destructive criminals. An example of private security's effectiveness is, back in 2019, there was a fad going on in grocery stores where people would open products, lick them, or swig something, and then spit it back into the bottle. I know, gross, right? Anyway, many of the grocery stores hired out to private security, and the private security forces were able to catch these people in record time. However, when police were brought into these situations, they barely even acted. And I know what the big concern is going to be, and that being that the private security companies being disconnected from each other and not centrally backed or backed by anything else other than their clientele, will they be too weak to act? The answer to that is, in the face of the people, yes, but in the face of the violent predatory element, no, as violent predatory individuals are a vast minority even in our current society and usually don't form the clientele of a private security company. But if a private security company or companies wish to oppress the people, they would not be able to, unlike a public security force. As an added plus, private security are paid more and trained better than any public security force, as they must stay competitive against other security companies, which means they will serve you, the people, all the more better than a public security force would. But you don't have to take my word for it. Here.
Dale Brown, an ex-Army paratrooper, began teaching his own brand of self-defense in the early 90s. He started his own security company in 2000.
So this is a Detroit fair fight, 4-on-1. Keep your knees bent.
Brown says his 60-person Viper force has more than 5,000 private citizens as clients, along with 100 businesses. Altogether, the company brings in about $2 million a year.
This is a community that pays us to protect their community, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No home invasions, no murders, no rapes, and no armed robberies whatsoever have been done here. So police use law enforcement, and what we do is use bodyguarding tactics to prevent predation. Our goal is to create conditions where violence does not occur. We deter violent criminal behavior by projecting strength. So our vehicles have all white strobe lights. Our vehicles are black and chrome. There's a strong sense that there is a strong organization that's protecting these people. And then we speak to people very respectfully.
You have any weapons on you right now? Okay. Walk with me over here, please.
And so we have all these different ways of showing that this is just not a good place to be a predator. And it's all nonviolent. And we're growing. So more and more people, they want us in their communities.
I think in areas in Detroit where you have these very affluent communities right in the heart of the ghetto, if you will, more and more people are utilizing services like threat management. They've shown up whenever I've called them. And in fact, their response time is so much greater than the Detroit Police Department that without them, I would not be as comfortable.
Private security is booming in Detroit. The largest contractor has reported 25% year-over-year growth since the city's bankruptcy. But it wasn't just because of the city's bankruptcy. In 2003, the federal government accused the Detroit PD of unconstitutional conduct, including excessive use of force and illegal detentions. They were under federal oversight for 13 years. Although the department has improved, Detroit still has the second worst crime rate in the country.
So this location, this is one of our clients. If you set up security service with us, we respond to your home, 10 minutes, $10. So when we respond to your home, it's a $10 charge for the first 10 minutes. Every minute after that is $1 a minute. The main purpose for this is so they feel safe when they close up. What you could have is a person trying to hide next to the car when they close up and then attack them when they get to their vehicles. So they start clients leaving, we wait outside while they lock up the property, and then we'll sit in front of the building to wait till the store closes.
The byproduct of your purpose is that people prosper. And then we charge them a bunch of money so we can have things. Drill stations. The first one is elevated rails. The elevated rails are very difficult. It helps you overcome the strength-weight ratio that usually happens to adults. We find that our upper body strength is not enough to support our body weight, and this training helps us overcome that. This is called quad bags. Quad bags is specifically designed to help you overcome the fear that you have and the fact that we're not used to fighting in multiple directions. When you punch a single punching bag, what happens is you become target fixated. And as you can see, there's 4 bags here. By you striking 4 bags, and they're all connected at the top, what happens when you strike one, the other ones are coming towards you. Therefore, you're learning how to fight and survive in multiple directions. And therefore, you're able to defend yourself against multiple aggressors. Next, this is the stage climb. Very difficult, but this type of functional fitness allows you to protect yourself and keep yourself safe from violent criminals should you have to also escape by climbing something. Over here, this is the shooting station. Here, you're learning accuracy, speed, and target selection. You want to, as accurately as possible, strike your metal targets, and then here, your score is tallied and it goes to your records.
Ready! Ready, sir! Vortex! Move!
And from there on in, I hope you get the point.
Once law enforcement was in place, the people were freer. They could leave their property, work in the fields, and so on. In short, the proper amount of government makes everyone freer.
Again, I really hope nobody's falling for that at this point.
There are some who advocate anarchy, however, not because they want no government, but because they don't like what they have. They use anarchy as a tool for revolutionary change. The condition of anarchy is very much like a vacuum where something rushes in to fill it.
In cases like quote-unquote anarcho-communism, this is true, whereas groups like Antifa and other ANCOMs try to use what they call anarchy as a means of achieving their own ends. However, those ends are not anarchist in nature, but simply another form of government. But we'll get to that in another video.
These calculating anarchists work to break down the existing government with rioting, killing, looting, and terrorism. Tragically, the people living in such chaos often go to those best able to put an end to it and beg them to take over and restore order. And who is best able to put an end to the chaos? The very people who started it. The anarchists who created the problem then create a government run by them, an oligarchy, where they have total power. This is exactly what happened in Russia that led to Lenin taking total power, and in Germany, where Hitler's brown shirts created the chaos that brought him to power. But anarchy isn't a stable form of government. It's a quick transition from something that exists to something desired by the power-hungry.
This is also true unless the anarchy or anarchism can be accepted by the people over time through methods that are themselves more or less revolutionary, but non-violent.
It's a temporary condition. And because it isn't permanent, we eliminate it as well. The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratein, meaning to rule. Democracy, therefore, means the rule of the people, majority rule. This, of course, sounds good, but suppose the majority decides to take away one's home, or business, or children. Obviously, there has to be a limit. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained.
A flaw in a system like a republic is that the law is not restrained. But okay, fine. We'll get there in a minute.
If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something in a democracy, they rule. What about republic? Well, that comes from the Latin, res meaning thing, and publica meaning public. It means the public thing, the law. A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone.
Which is an absurd statement. The government are the ones making the laws. They are the ones who made the quote-unquote law limiter and violate it on a daily basis. The concept of law is like a smokescreen that gives people the illusion of freedom, but only brings about more government tyranny.
America's founders had a clean slate to write on. They could have set up an oligarchy. In fact, there were some who wanted George Washington to be their king. But the Founding Fathers knew history, and they chose to give us the rule of law in a republic, not the rule of a majority in a democracy. Why? Let's demonstrate the difference in the setting of the Old West. Consider a lynch mob in a democracy. 35 horseback riders chase one lone gunman. They catch him, and they vote 35-1 to hang him. Democracy has triumphed, and there's one less gunman to contend with. Now consider the same scenario in a republic. The 35 horseback riders catch the gunman and vote 35-1 to hang him, but the sheriff arrives, and he says, "You can't kill him. He's got his right to a fair trial." So they take the gunman back to town. A jury of his peers is selected, and they hear the evidence and the defense, and they decide if he shall hang. Does the jury even decide by majority rule? No, it has to be unanimous or he goes free.
Which of course makes the assumption that the lawmen were infallible at the time and wouldn't join the posse out of anger or spite, or that they wouldn't be overruled by the posse and or killed by them. Which of course, this leads me into my overall point for this video, but we'll get into that in a moment.
The rights of the government aren't subject to majority rule, but to the law. This is the essence of a republic.
This leads me into the main point of this video that I was trying to make, and why republics are themselves oligarchies. Let me ask this question to everyone. Is the law a self-sustaining entity that can enforce itself infallibly? Are the Constitution and Bill of Rights self-sustaining entities that can enforce themselves infallibly? The answer is, of course, no to all of these questions. Yes, and there were multiple questions. Forgive me. The laws are made and enforced by people who are fallible. And in our current system of republic, there is no limit on how many laws there can be. The print work is there for every action of our existence to be controlled and dictated by the law. And before you come at me with a rebuking, "No, they can't. The Constitution and Bill of Rights protects us." Really, how? How are we protected from any corruption or overage of laws? Is it the people? Are the people going to do something about this? Well, apparently, no, they aren't. Also, getting back to the example of the lawman and the posse. The lawman at any time can be overruled by the posse, and the posse can decide to kill him along with the gunmen. As I stated before, the only common solution to this is to have more lawmen, until you have a practical army of lawmen over the people. Even our founders themselves warned us against large standing armies and large military establishments, and usually this army of lawmen are put in place to enforce the law with unlimited centralized power and with very little accountability to their actions, when they themselves know very little of the laws they are supposed to enforce and keep to. Or they may know a lot about the law, but the laws may be too many and may violate the very Constitution and Bill of Rights that were supposed to limit said laws in the first place. What then? Oh, and of course, The lawmen need support and backup beyond even themselves. Examples being federal marshals, Federal Bureau of Investigation, even the military. What then are people supposed to do to attain justice when their rights have been trampled? That's a lot to slog through when your justice has been denied to you by the law enforcement establishment. What then? Go to court? Just so you can have your justice denied when the judicial system favors the law enforcers and lawmakers over you when you are the victim? This ultimately creates the oligarchy of the republic. The law does not enforce itself. It is enforced by people that claim to be its prophets, interpreting its will. But like any other religion, they are only interpreting their will and using the law as their shining symbol. Ladies and gentlemen, a republic is nothing more than a socialism by rule and edict of the law. So yes, republics are nothing more than oligarchies. So I think it's safe to say that we can put the concept of the republic in the section of oligarchy. So what options are there? What options are there left? There's oligarchy, and then there's anarchy. In oligarchies, the rulers will always demand your conformity to the will of the oligarchy, whether it's one ruler, a group, the mob, or those who claim to be prophets of the law. The call of anarchism is simply this, and I quote Charlie Chaplin from The Great Dictator. Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. Human beings, individuals, independent and sovereign unto yourselves.
Counsel the Romans did. Based on what they knew of Solon's laws, they created the 12 tables of the Roman law and in effect built a republic that limited government power and left the people alone.
Interesting how the narrator here, as well as the makers of this video, never once mentioned that by Roman law, chattel slavery was not only legal, but was enforced by rule and edict of said law. In fact, the same was the case here in the United States of America before the Civil War. Chattel slavery was the word and the law, and for trying to help innocent people made slaves from their enslavement, by law you could be prosecuted and even hanged. Yeah, how good did the law work out then? Guess they should have stopped running and trying to achieve freedom and obeyed the law, right? If you don't obey the law here in America, then go hang from a damn tree. Isn't that right, Americans? Oh, why are you angry, Christians? Why are you angry at this image? Jesus broke the law of Rome. Isn't this just punishment for breaking the law? And unfortunately, people nowadays have traded their freedom for a new kind of slavery. Slavery unto the establishment of the law. Slavery to taxes, slavery to law, slavery to the system. Out of fear of the system and fear of what would happen without the system, even though the system itself is corrupt. But night shift, you might be asking, aren't there any good law enforcers? Well, actually, there are. Just none of them employed. As I said before, the system rewards corruption and thrives off of corruption to keep itself in power. Unfortunately, there seems to be only two types of law enforcers: bad cops and silent bad cops. But again, if you take into account the corruption of the system, it's not hard to see why that is. So you're probably thinking, fine, Night Shift, what would you do? To answer that, I would have to quote an anarchist idol of mine, Gustave de Molinari, with, "Anarchy is no guarantee that some people won't kill, injure, kidnap, defraud, or steal from others. Government is a guarantee that some will." I would say, rewording this, I would risk the possibility of armed warlords that are not centrally backed and overwhelmingly reinforced and funded by a state entity over the inevitability of violent, brutal, badge-wearing, jackbooted, uniformed warlord thugs that are. I am willing to choose the tempestuous sea of liberty over the calm shore of despotism. And here come the American right-wing Trump trolls with their, then you choose tempestuous sea and get the fuck out of America. Or, without the law enforcement fuckers, we'd be dead in an hour or a week or some stupid shit like that, claiming anarchy would be a death sentence, even though they've never lived in an anarchy or dealt with anarchistic circumstances before. And yes, the sad fact is, I've seen people claim these things in YouTube comments and in real-life conversations. Instead of believing in their own strength and in their own abilities, they choose to bury their heads in sand. Oddly enough, most of these people are firearms ownership advocates. Interesting how you have the courage to own them, but not the courage to defend yourselves with them. In the end, it should be stated that all of these systems which inevitably become oligarchies are fallible systems created by humanity to be imposed on humanity, and therefore, none are going to bring about the best and most sustainable system for humanity. And to all of those out there who are going to say that anarchy is a system created by humanity, the answer is, it's not. It is humanity's natural state of being. Well, that's all I've got for this one. I'm Night Shift 10,000, and God, I've got to get back to posting more. Peace out.